Hello, everybody, and welcome back to In Liberty and Health. Today's show, I'm very much so looking forward to. My dad badgered me a little bit and wanted to make sure that I threw out there thank you to A&G Garage Repair for repairing my garage door. They did it in a very, very timely way. And since nobody writes checks anymore and they asked for a check, I'm waiting on a check, but they went and fixed my garage door anyways, and I haven't paid them yet. I'm going to, but as soon as the checks get here, so my dad badgered me to make sure I give him a shout out before I might get rolled into the show. So, yeah, today we're going to be talking about the battle for the 21st century AI and much more. This has been a topic that I've been very interested in, as a lot of people who've been following, geopolitics, or more specifically like the U.S. and kind of what's going on all throughout the world with AI. A lot of the guys in the so-called PayPal mafia are China hawks, and they're very, very big into AI and tech and all this stuff. I've been listening to lots of Ben Horowitz and Mark Andreessen kind of talk about this kind of stuff. So my guest today had a video with a guest named TP who, if you go over to his channel, you'll see all this stuff is very, very interesting stuff. And like I said, this has just been a huge interest to me. So without too much more rambling here, make sure you hit all the links below where you can find my guest, everything he's got going on, everything I got going on, deemed fit through the link below. Fox & Sons Coffee, use code Kyle at checkout. And make sure you go to Tiger Fitness through the link below as well to get some great supplements, all the stuff that I use all day, every day. And with all that out of the way, let's rock and roll. And returning to the show, my friend Carl Zaw. How you doing, man?
How are you, Kyle?
Excellent. And we're not all dead. We were told that if Trump got elected again, we'd have World War III and the world would end. But we're still here so far. Although, despite Biden's worst attempts to make that so.
Yeah, I mean, Biden is just doing a Dark Brandon moment. I mean, this is a real Dark Brandon coming out. He's like, you know what? You DNC Obama, you guys screwed me, so I'm gonna screw you back by nominate Kamala Harris, the worst candidate possible, even worse than Hillary. Remember, Hillary actually won the popular vote,
Right?
And Kamala was polling like less than Andrew Yang during the primary 4 years ago. I mean, people still remember Andrew Yang. Kamala came under that, and now he's like, you know what? I'm going out. Trump is going in, so I'm gonna leave him an absolute mess. So I'm gonna Trump. Biden actually just a few months back before the election, Biden actually overruled to grant permission to Ukraine for use longer range missile to strike Russia at that time, because he looks like, okay, he was still going to be the Democratic candidate when he still had plans for the future. Right. Now he's like, you know what? Screw you all. I'm going to go wander off the Amazonian jungle and lick my ice cream. Good luck.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did too. I didn't watch that video until Monday night. And it is the funniest thing ever. You think he would have made a beeline for the path that was like pretty clear, but he was going for the woods. I didn't get to see I just saw like that little 10-second clip, but it's like, where are you going, bro? Like, I almost want to feel bad for him. I mean, he really epitomizes everything that's wrong with the American system today. But at the same time, it's like, man, he's like 87 years old. Do you really think he knows what he's doing? Who knows?
Did you see what happened later in G20 in Rio de Janeiro? Like, they were supposed to do a group photo shoot for the G20 leaders, but Biden was late. So the rest of the G20 leaders like, you know what? Let's just have the photo anyway. Forget about him. And you have the U.S. journalists yelling on the sides like, no way, what are you doing? Wait for Biden. They're like, no, we're just gonna have our photo.
Oh my God, yeah, that sounds about right. So, I guess I want to ask your thoughts on kind of how the election went. My thoughts kind of were initially that I thought Trump was going to win, but I thought it was going to be a pretty thin margin. And like in the overall popular vote, it wasn't like a huge margin, but it wasn't a small margin either. He definitely beat Kamala, but then obviously with the Electoral College, I mean, he completely beat the brakes off Kamala when it came to that. So what were your thoughts on the fateful day of November? What the hell was it? November 6th. It was the day that I turned 30 years old, literally 2 weeks ago. But that was also the day that we decided we were electing Donald Trump. So yeah, go ahead.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
So I mean, this really shows how much disconnected the mainstream media is, and how good of a job they did put a wool on many of us. Because right up to the election, they're still spinning the tale like, oh, it's going to be close. It's going to be a possible Kamala victory. You know, you have people writing writing letters to Kamala addressing to the future president of the United States. Oh, DNC actually sent that, tweeted out like, happy birthday to the future president of the United States. And many people are like, are you kidding me? That's what Hillary posted for many years ago. You're doing a Hillary 2.0. I mean, that's exactly what they did. Kamala is Hillary 2.0, except even worse. I mean, she did worse. And the fact that many, I mean, even me actually went into the election thought it's going to be close, because this is how much the power mainstream media still have on us. Even like I'm very skeptical of mainstream media, but you know, we don't have the kind of the power to poll, to run public opinion polls and like that. But from my conversation with average folks, average Americans I know, none of them are voting for Kamala. So I mean, I thought it was just the circle I was running with, like maybe because I'm a white supremacist. But see, like it's people, it's. I mean, something has to change. If this they had this election that Kamala somehow won, if they had to rig the election, that would have been like political pandemonium in United States. I mean, I don't think a civil war would ever break out because U.S. military is too powerful for that. But it will be like total chaos. So I'm glad everything worked. I mean, I don't like either candidate. Just let's get that out of the way. People are like, oh, Carl is pro Trump. No. Pox on both of their houses. It's U.S. policy is not going to change. The deep state is going to be fully in charge. Trump said he's going to fight the deep state. Well, he lost that battle the first term. I don't think he's going to win this term either. I mean, he's I mean, right now, like the Elon Musk and this the Department of Carbon Efficiency, I watch it more like as a live reality show, like comedy. We'll see what's going to happen. I don't expect much out of it. So I don't think there's going to be much change in terms of U.S. foreign policy, because it's going to be the same people. Like Trump. The thing is, who is going to find? Look at all the Trump candidates for his cabinet. They're all like neocons. So how is this going to change? Nothing much is going to change.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And this is something that I've been kind of going to battle with some of my friends who supported Trump over this. And I'm like, he has filled his cabinet with the most fervent, radical, pro-Israel, Zionist, neoconservatives that you could possibly imagine. And like, there's some people that I actually kind of like Matt Gaetz is Attorney General. I actually like Matt Gaetz. He's a pretty radical guy. And he even said before, like, hey, I lobbied Trump to try to free Assange and free Snowden. But he's like, Trump wouldn't budge on Assange, but he's like, Snowden, he was at least open to. But then like Marco Rubio's worse than Anthony Blinken. Like, you can't get worse than Marco Rubio. Like, what the hell are we doing? And then Pete Hegseth is this rabid Third Temple Zionist lunatic. And then on top of that, what's his face? Mark Walls, he was saying that Biden wasn't doing enough to arm Ukraine. So like, with all these picks, you kind of have to grade on the Trump curve. But if you grade on the Trump curve, well, Mark Walls is dog shit. Marco Rubio is dog shit. And then even like Tulsi Gabbard is good on some stuff, but then she did all these about faces where she said, "Oh, Trump was so horrible on Iran," and "Oh, Israel is occupying Gaza." But then all of a sudden, she doesn't talk about that anymore, and she's saying, "Oh no, we have to fight radical Islamist terrorism, and we're supposed to believe that the Republicans purge the neocons from their party." I'm sorry, we got to rain check on that one, please.
Yeah, I mean, Tulsi Gabbard is good on some things, but in the end, she just want to do imperialism differently. She want to be able to pick her targets. She doesn't like the target Biden administration pick. So we're gonna end for. I mean, either party you've had the one would still be like an Israel first victory. Either party are Israel first party. I mean, Israel is the golden child. This golden child can do no
Bibi
wrong.
always wins no matter who got elected.
Exactly. So I did not expect much to change. But it's still good that it happened, because had somehow Trump lost, if they rigged the election or something, the Democrats is going to keep doing what they're doing. I mean, you have Pete Buttigieg said, "Oh, a victory for Kamala will maybe force a return to a normal Republican Party." I'm like, what do you mean? The Democrats are now the normal Republican Party. You are aligning yourself with Dick Cheney and George W. Bush. I mean, like, what the hell are you talking about here? So Trump is different because he is not the establishment, and he shook up the Republican establishment. And the Democrats were able to do the shit they were doing because they thought that nothing needs to change. Everything is they're gaslighting everybody about how economy is doing wonderfully. Inflation is not a problem, when everyone knows that's utter bullshit. So I'm glad it happened that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And my kind of saying the whole way around was like, the Democrats absolutely have to lose, but like Trump does not deserve to win. But I mean, priority number one, the Democrats got to lose, because green lighting genocide in Gaza, and then just green lighting all the things that happen in Ukraine and Russia without any kind of diplomacy at all is just, you have to lose, and it has to be an absolute blowout. It has to be humiliating for you, because that's what the Democratic Party really deserves. So my thought is that I think the Democratic Party is going to have to really reshape, unless, and I kind of feel like Trump's going to fumble the ball again throughout this term. But I feel like the Democrats are really going to have something to offer in 2028, like somebody that's more relatable, like a Bernie Sanders, or maybe even a Gavin Newsom, or like the awful governor of this state, Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. Someone like them seems a little bit more appealing. But what are your thoughts on the Democratic Party going forward?
Well, yeah, like they keep on talking about you have people like AOC, who's like total sellout, and maybe she's not even a sellout. She was just a good actor all along, and all their agenda is to get you to vote for the DNC. To go for the Democratic establishment that totally neutered Bernie Sanders during the 2020 election, and then now Bernie Sanders actually he come out and say, "Oh, Democrats wasn't doing this yourself any favors." I mean, like, where were you last 4 years, Bernie? You have been lending your legitimacy to the Biden-Harris administration. Now you say it, but at least he's coming out and saying it. Now it created space for dissent within the Democratic Party itself. It created because Kamala, she lost 50 million voters, compared to the Biden election. Those 50 million voters could have propelled her to victory. So now it's time for them to do a soul search. Why did they lose their core supporters? Why did they lose their base? One thing about Trump and Republican is they always pander to their base. They do not abandon their base. This is why they win. The Democrats, they try to ghostlight. They're trying to browbeat their base into voting for them. You have Obama, trying to like gaslighting black man for, like, it's your fault for not voting a woman. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is ridiculous. I mean, anyway, I'm glad that it happened. It's a lesson that Democrats should take into heart. And if they really want to stage any kind of comeback, they will have. There needs to be some change happening within. There needs to be some kind of like something akin to a Trump revolution that happened on the Republican side. They need to let the populists take charge.
Yeah, I agree. Now, I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. kind of had the opportunity to do that, but obviously the the Democratic establishment is so corrupt. Like for me, I was genuinely surprised that other people were surprised that they just rigged it for Kamala. And people are like, she didn't even have a primary. The Democrats rigged it for Kamala. And I was like, you guys are surprised they did this for every single election for the last 3 elections, and you're still surprised. You still think they're going to be honest and open about their election in their own party? No, it's a rigged game for them.
But that was Biden though. That was Biden's revenge on the DNC, because now you have Pelosi coming out and saying, "Oh, we wanted an open primary, but our hands were tied after Biden endorsed Kamala 30 minutes after we told him he had to step down." I mean, like, did you see that Biden speech after the election? Suddenly, he's all like acting like a spring chicken. He was eloquent. We were like, what happened?
They gave him the good drugs that time.
Yeah, he wanted Trump to win. Biden wanted Trump to win despite the DNC, and he succeeded.
Yeah, it must have been the time that he put the MAGA hat on here. Funny enough, it was some firefighters here in Pennsylvania or something like that. So I was like, okay, well, my wife is a firefighter, so all right, she gave him the hat. We'll just run with that one for internet clout. But one other thing interesting about this election is kind of, I don't want to say the realignment, but kind of the forces that got behind Trump. So obviously the biggest one and the one that he's displayed the most loyalty to is, shocker, Miriam Adelson and the Israeli lobby. Now, the other thing that's kind of interesting, and I don't know how this is going to play out, and this has been something I've talked to a lot of people about, and just I'm trying to build a consensus here, or at least try to gauge what the truth is this whole deal with the PayPal mafia. And in case you're not familiar with exactly what this is basically the guys in big tech: Vivek Ramaswamy, David Sachs, Mark Andreessen, David Horowitz, Elon Musk, obviously, and Peter Thiel. Eric Prince is sometimes kind of grouped in with all these guys, a lot of like the venture capital guys. And basically the thought was that, okay, well, they installed JD Vance as the vice president because he's going to be kind of a surrogate for the PayPal mafia. And obviously Elon donated, I think it was $170 million, whereas Miriam Adelson only donated $100 million. My thought has been so far, okay, so we've seen him display the utmost loyalty to Israel. There is no question about that. I mean, moving the embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing the Golan Heights in Syria, unprecedented aid, and then, just kissing Bibi's ass the entire time. And then, right after October 7th right after the last Iranian strike on Israel, he said, let's pass unlimited aid to Israel. I have a hard time believing that he's going to be more loyal to someone than Israel. But once again, now we haven't seen him display the same loyalty to the PayPal mafia, but the PayPal mafia has given him a lot of money. So I know I threw a lot at you there, but I'm really curious your thoughts on this kind of stuff. And then this kind of carries us into the rest of the conversation I really wanted to have with you today.
Well, the Israel thing is a given, because Trump needed to secure the bag of Adelson money. Adelson was the widow of Sheldon Adelson, who runs the Las Vegas Sands. I mean, she's like one of the top billionaires, and she donates a lot of money to the Trump. So that's a given. To secure the Adelson money, you gotta go pro-Israel all the way. The tech bro, I think they are. By the way, I met Peter Thiel in person. He's a weird guy. He's a weird guy. I'm very strange. I tell you, like, because he was one of my friend from high school was actually like PayPal employee number 4. So so when I visited him in San Francisco, he took me to a Peter Thiel party. This was like back in 2008, before the great financial crisis. And at that time, like, there's something off about this guy. This guy's strange. But I think that was before Peter Thiel fully came out. I think he was still pretending he's not gay or something at that point. But anyway, so the tech bros, they saw what Biden has done is not working for them. I mean, the Intel is in trouble. All the tech companies are in trouble, and they are composed the largest block on the S&P 500 right now, and so this is why they probably have a better gauge of the public opinion than the rest of us, than even the mainstream media, just by their control of social media, right?
Yeah.
Facebook, Twitter. So they probably have a better metric of determining which wind the political wind is blowing. So this is why they actually came pretty late to the Trump side, But once they saw which way the wind blowing, you have like Mark Zuckerberg of all people saying nice things about Trump in presidential, after the failed assassination. So right now, it's good. We'll just have to see how much Elon Musk can have a say in the government. I mean, obviously he's very close to Trump. But Trump is a wild card, right? Like a lot of people that were originally close to him in the Trump 1.0, later they all got filtered out. So we'll have to see how long Elon Musk Trump bromance will last. But Elon Musk, he's kind of stretched kind of thin. He's not even putting a lot of effort right now in Tesla. For people who are watching the tech space, he's involved in too many projects. I don't know how much, even if he had, I don't even know if he has the time and energy to influence the Trump administration, right? I don't know what kind of bandwidth he will have. So that's my thought.
Okay, yeah. So as far as they all kind of go, the whole tech bro deal, it's not like they're all homogenous in their thinking and what their desires are, but one thing that some people have been talking about and kind of gives me hope about this whole new Cold War with China, as this is one of my biggest passion projects, is to talk about this, because nobody wants that war. Elon does a lot of business over in China, because China has a huge EV market. And to me, if Elon is in Trump's ear, then, hey, maybe he can help influence him to cool things off. But then again, we also have Marco Rubio, who has literally called for blowing up Chinese aircraft carriers. Mark Walls is a huge China hawk. Vance is a China hawk. Everybody under the Trump administration is so hawkish on China. And, it's not good, but also the tech bros are concerned about who's kind of controlling AI. So what do you think about Elon being in Trump's ear? And if you think that there are kind of any hopes that we're going to wind back this pivot to Asia policy that really, Trump, Biden, and Obama have kind of been running on?
Yeah, I mean, we have to wait and see how much influence Elon has on the Trump administration. But he does have a stake in China. His Shanghai Gigafactory is what made Tesla profitable in the first place.
Okay.
Tesla wasn't profitable before they opened the Shanghai Gigafactory. Yeah. And the Biden tariff, the 300% tariff that's slapped against Chinese EVs, guess what? The biggest EV export out of China is Tesla. so Elon has skin in the game, and I think this is why before the election, Trump even talked about he will welcome Chinese investment into building EV factory in United States rather having them built in Mexico. But whether China will take that offer, that's another discussion, because for business to have long-term planning, to build a factory, make it running, that take 4 years, and then it's another election cycle in United States. You never know if that U.S. policy is going to remain the same. And so there's a lot. That's a risk assessment for companies like BYD. But it is good that Elon do have skin in the game. He obviously would not want his Shanghai Gigafactory get blown up in a war. And so that's a positive side. And then there's the other side is priorities. U.S. empire, as we know, is not a monolith at the top. Our elite is like fractured oligarchs all fighting for power, and we have this is why even in foreign policy, they're the ones who the Democrats wanted to continue the Ukraine conflict. The Republicans want to concentrate on confronting China, but they all agree in supporting Israel in Middle East. I mean, and Trump had a big hard on for going hard on Iran. So that area might take priority over China, because if something touch off in the Middle East, like this is what Bibi wants, by the way. Bibi wants to drag United States deeper into a wider Middle East war, and knowing how pro-Israel Trump administration is, that could very likely possible. And then we're just gonna back to like 2003, right? We're back to the Great War on Terror era, and U.S. is gonna stuck in the Middle East quagmire forever while China continue to build and develop. So that's a distinct possibility, because there's not much they can push on China at this moment besides trade issues. I think there might be a continuation of the Biden administration policy of trade war against China. I mean, Trump is very big on the trade war, so I suspect that might even intensify. And this is where Elon interests also align with Trump. Elon has publicly said, if Chinese EV is allowed to sell in U.S., they will kill all the legacy car makers in U.S. So I don't expect the tariff to be lifted against the Chinese EVs, and they might even intensify. And Trump already said something about 60% tariff on all Chinese goods across the board. So that might remain in place. But my concern, as someone who lives in Indonesia, in Bali, my concern is more whether United States will blow up the world, right? And so, it's
a fair concern.
I think at least in Pacific, Asia Pacific, I think the interest is low on say like a Taiwan issue touching off a war, because in Taiwan, the thing with Taiwan is the Taiwan government will never do anything without explicit approval and backing by United States. And China and mainland China is very clear on what their red line is on Taiwan. Is don't declare formal independence. That would be a red line. That would be a trigger for war. So only if the U.S. is dead set on touching off World War III by telling the Taiwan government to declare formal independence, then I don't think war is likely to break up in the Taiwan Strait. I mean, for all the rhetorics of little Marco, I don't think I think the cooler heads in Pentagon will prevail. They'll probably tell him to cool off. Look, we still want to retire comfortably to in Bahamas. Get our whiff from the military-industrial complex, get our paybacks, and retire. We don't want to blow up the world. So tension. U.S. is still interested very much in maintaining tension all over East Asia, but I don't think they're ready to really touch off World War III. Now Ukraine is a different issue, because we already talked about Biden is setting Trump up to fail. Trump wants to pull back from Ukraine. That's his state. Oh, do you remember Trump said 24 hours from his
he'll settle the war within 24 hours as president-elect. But the one thing that I always try to put a pin in here, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but like back in April or May, he helped. I mean, other congressmen called him and got his blessing. Even Mike Johnson got his blessing to pass the largest foreign aid package in history, which included aid for Ukraine. So I've heard you talk about this on other streams. I think it was Red Pill Diaries and even on the Revolutionary Blackout Network. I think you and I are in agreement here that I don't think Trump ever really, it sounded good to say you were going to end the Ukraine war, but I don't think he ever really had a plan for it. Like, it was like when he got asked about healthcare, I have a concept of a plan. You don't have a plan. You just have a concept of a plan. And then when he really got pressed on it, what'd he say? Oh, I'll tell Ukraine that they better, back off, or else I'm going to leave them high and dry. And I'm going to tell Russia that I'll give Ukraine everything they want. But then really, like, all the people in his cabinet have pretty much said, like, hey, we're just going to give Ukraine everything they want, but it's going to be a loan instead of just given to them, which basically means status quo.
Yeah, and also like the Ukrainian battlefield is totally favoring Russia right now.
Yeah.
I mean, Russia is looking to end the war on their own terms. They're not
Right.
even looking to America doing anything. I mean, they'll probably prefer U.S. lift the sanctions on Russia, but in terms of Ukraine war, that's their top priority. That's their red line. They don't want NATO next door, so they're going to finish that war on their own terms. Right now everything is going in their way. And yeah, like Biden just left a big fu by authorizing longer missile strike into Russia. Yeah, I don't think Trump is going to win this one. Like this, too much at stake. Too many jobs and careers at stake for all the NATO bureaucrats, all the Atlantis institutions. They all depend on this. And Ukraine has been very, very lucrative. Ukraine and Israel. If you look at the stock price of Lockheed Martin or Raytheon, they got the first jump in their stock price after the Russia's special military operation, and then they got a huge ramp up after October 7th. They're reeking money head over heels right now. They don't want this to end. I mean, they might. I think there will probably be check on. There will be some limits on the Ukraine. What they probably want to do is make it a frozen conflict. Going back to Ukraine like before 2014, where U.S. is still backing Ukraine financially, but like no hot kinetic war at the front line. You will still have armies face off against each other, but no major push like invasion of Kursk in Russian soil or something like that. And it's likely that they're going to pull back on the granting permission of long range missile strike into Russia. Because first of all, we don't even know how many missiles Ukraine has. I mean, U.S. could just simply not supply them anymore. I mean, then they'll have nothing. So I think Ukraine conflict will be contained to not trigger a World War III scenario, but it will probably still go on for foreseeable future, just because this is how the arms dealers make their money.
Right. Yeah. And that seems to be probably a profitable venture for them, where they still get to kind of sell arms, whether that be under the guise of being just given to Ukraine or being a loan. So one thing I also wanted to touch on there, because you mentioned Taiwan briefly. Ever since 2022 in August, when Nancy Pelosi decided to make her little trip over there, we always see people saying, "Oh my God, Taiwan! They're imminent. China's going to invade Taiwan tomorrow." And then, there's a blockade around Taiwan. It breaks all the news, and of course, the stocks go up. They fuck with the markets because of that. And like a lot of Republicans, their main goal now is, I mean, I'm pretty sure even, JD Vance has said this, Josh Hawley has said this, where they say basically like, we need to stop fighting in Ukraine because we need to focus on China. We need to put those resources towards China. But under the Biden administration, Kamala Harris went over to the Philippines to sign arms guarantee treaties, and also the war guarantees over like disputed reefs between China and the Philippines, sending nukes over, or more arms over to Australia to build up AUKUS. And then also, hey, they told Japan, hey, we're going to double your military budget by 2025 or whatever it was. So we've seen a lot of that under the Biden administration. I don't want to say it's going to be worse on the Trump administration, but I feel like it's going to be, because they're so explicitly hawkish on China. So what do you think that, and also the, what was it? The DPP won in Taiwan during their election in 2022, who's a little bit more independence minded and a little bit more biased to the West, if I understand that correctly. So what are your thoughts with the DPP and the Trump administration going forward and how that relates to China?
Well, DPP is an explicitly pro-independence party on Taiwan. Their party platform is for formal independence of Taiwan. But guess what? The DPP administration have been ruling for Taiwan for many years. Did they declare formal independence? No. They have come away like roundabout justification to say, oh, Republic of China on Taiwan is already independent, so we don't need to declare independence, right? I mean, this is all bullshit because as I said before, they would not be able to do it without explicit approval and encouragement from the United States. Only if the Washington decide to push that war button, then Taiwan will declare formal independence. So I don't think there will be a lot of posture. First of all, right now, all the U.S. aircraft carrier battle group are now in the Middle East. How are you gonna? What are you gonna do in Taiwan? This is why you have all these shows like you have the Germans, Dutch sending their navy ships through Taiwan Strait. This is all for show. I mean, like the German frigate that passed through Taiwan Strait on its way back to Germany, you had to avoid going through the Red Sea because it had no anti-air defense capability. Because they're scared of Houthi missiles taking them down. I mean, this is so all their posturing in South China Sea or in Taiwan Strait is exactly that. It's posturing. It's backed up by nothing. They're just there saying, "Oh, we're showing the flag," and all these European navies are deploying to East Asia to show flag is because there's a vacuum created by all these American aircraft carrier battle group being deployed to Middle East, and so like. They're trying to patch up a hole over here by taking something from Europe. It's imperial overreach. This is still the problem the U.S. empire had been facing for a long time now. They just three-front war is not sustainable. This is why some Republicans are saying let's wind down Ukraine, devote more resource in China. Well, guess what? What about Israel? What about the golden child? Israel demand all the resources. They didn't have they couldn't supply enough 155 millimeter artillery shell to Ukraine because they had to now redirect them to Israel, and Israel been using them, killing women and children, and they are depleting the stockpiles of the U.S. military themselves. Of course, this is great money-making opportunity for all the arms manufacturers, but it actually degrades the U.S. its own warfighting capability when its own stock piles of missiles and artillery shells are running low in order to support the operation in Middle East and Ukraine. And so, like China also understands this. China understands this. A lot of this is this posture. In the recent APEC meeting in Peru, Xi Jinping actually had a sideline meeting with Biden's team. There's the China-U.S. summit over there, and Xi Jinping was very blunt to laying out what China's red lines are. It says, okay, first, Taiwan issue, do not push for Taiwan independence. Two, we are equals. We should treat each other as equals. Don't try to impose your values and trying to change us. Constantly lecturing us on human rights, democracy, etc. When he didn't say it, but everyone understood. I mean, how?
Yeah.
I mean, what's U.S. is in no position to lecture anybody about democracy and human rights right now when they're supporting genocide in Palestine, and we have an election that was between Kamala and Trump, the only two choices you have. And so the other thing Xi Jinping pointed out, it's like, okay, every country should be able to determine their own development path, and our red line is do not try to stop our progress. He's talking about Biden's chip sanction. The whole chip sanction is supposed to cripple the Chinese AI development. So China's progress will fall behind. And this where you don't get any kind of reporting from the mainstream media on the Chinese readout. Whereas the U.S. readout is just plain weird. They're saying something like both sides have agreed to not the nuclear weapons should not be controlled by AI, but by a human decision maker. I'm like, what? I didn't even know there's a discussion about allowing AI to control nuclear strike capabilities. Are you kidding me? I mean, were you actually thinking of creating this Terminator Skynet future? It's really crazy talk, and this goes to this crazy U.S. obsession about AI competition with China, which I think is totally stupid. The whole rationale Biden administration used for the chip sanction is so that China do not gain the advanced semiconductor manufacturing capability to fuel their AI development. But what we have seen is that hasn't stopped Huawei from creating their latest AI chip, Ascend, which is on the par with the NVIDIA products. And the flip side of that chip sanction is now NVIDIA is prevented from United States government from selling to Huawei. You know what? China, one of its biggest market, you know, NVIDIA, the biggest profit come from the Chinese market, but United States government is telling them, it's like, no, you can't sell those to China. We don't want to fuel Chinese AI development. So Huawei just went ahead and created their own. And the problem is with this kind of U.S. policy, that once the U.S. and Western companies lose their market in China, those markets are not coming back, because all these Chinese companies who previously were very happy to source their chips from U.S. and other Western countries are now looking at, oh, we could be cut off anytime just by a decree from Washington. You know, we rather try to source this domestically where we don't have that problem, even if the domestic manufacturers like SMIC might be a couple generations behind, but at least we have something. At least that we have chips versus we're getting choked off. So this actually in turn fuels China's own internal tech development. You know, China used to import like $450 billion worth of chips. They spend more money importing chip than they spend importing oil. So U.S. right now is saying, no, we're not going to sell that to you. This also put to the lie that U.S. is concerned about the trade deficit, because as the result of the trade sanctions on China, now the largest U.S. export to China is corns and soybeans. I mean, the U.S. export to China looks like what a third world country export to advanced economies. You know, it's all like raw commodities, like agricultural products, because United States government is not allowing like China to buy what they actually want to buy, which is like advanced chips and technology and stuff like that. So China's like, okay, we'll just create our own, and then we won't be needing you anymore. And this is another reason I think the tech bros are jump ship from DNC to supporting Trump, because they see that, you know, what the Biden administration policy was not sustainable. You know, Biden, I would say, is probably the worst U.S. president in recent history. You know, he's even worse than George W. Bush in terms of dealing a blow to the American power worldwide just by insane, stupid policies. Like, I know who is driving this kind of the AI centric approach in US. It's Eric Schmidt, the former Google CEO, because he has a large contract with Pentagon to create using AI to create the next generation weapon. So of course he's gonna say China is the enemy, and then, you know, because you got to give him more money to fund more AI development in and all these noise about chip sanctions against China. If you trace their origin, many of them produced by think tanks that was funded by Eric Schmidt, and because he has skin in the game. He has a vested interest to make sure United States trying to cripple Chinese AI development at the same time creating an enemy, so he has more contract from Pentagon. And this is kind of the world we live in right now in US, unfortunately.
Yeah. So the one thing that I think a lot of them are also concerned about is and I've even heard this from guys who would consider themselves anti-war, and somebody that you brought up a lot is John Mearsheimer, but where they say we want to contain China and that the battles for quantum computing. So I did a friend of mine's podcast, I want to say it was Sunday night, and he went over to Namibia for like a week or two. And he said, every single time I go over to China, he's like, I don't get hawkish, but he's like, I get a little bit more skeptical because he's like, I see that that China's going around and building all these relations. They build all this infrastructure in Africa. And he basically laid out the idea that the concern is that they're going to basically monopolize trade routes all over the world. And my pushback to him was like, China doesn't seem to want to have like a hostile worldwide order. The US does. China doesn't, though, because, China, like you were just saying, China imports, I think it's $9 billion in food from the US every single year because there's a lot of desert land in China. So they need to import food. And that's also, an incentive for them to end the Ukraine war, which, Z was talking about a couple of years ago, because there's a lot of grain in Ukraine. So, I mean, really, for China, they need a lot of stuff from throughout the world as well. But once again, if they don't have the US and other places trading partners, they'll just sell the stuff to other people. They don't need us as trading partners, but they want, and, in some cases need what we have. But, we need them a lot more than they need us.
And what is China building? China is building ports. During the APEC meeting in Peru, China announced its completion of $3.5 billion mega ports in Chiang Kai port, which, okay, when you build a port on an ocean, it's not just Chinese ship that's going to go to the port. Anybody's ship can go to the port. The port by its definition is open to all. The effect is creating global interconnectivity. I mean, China very much would like to trade with US, with Europe, without trade restrictions. It's US that's putting up trade barriers. This is another thing when US talk about we have to do freedom of navigation in South China Sea to maintain an open, free Indo-Pacific because there's vital sea lanes for the world commerce. Well, what they don't tell you is like 80 to 90% of the shipping traffic through South China Sea is either to or from China. So what kind of interest China has to close down their own vital sea lane? I mean, it's just an excuse. It's more like the U.S. is showing its flag, saying, you know what? Hey, look, we're dancing around in your vital supply route. We could do mischief if you're, if you get on our bad side. I mean, that's U.S. Navy has publicly said, they're going to use Strait of Malacca as a choking point to choke off Chinese energy supply coming from Middle East to South China Sea and all that. So this is no secret. And right now, U.S. always say that. John Mearsheimer's argument is that China is not a status quo power; it's a rising power. So it will challenge the status quo power that is United States. But if you look at what's actually happening, United States is not a status quo power anymore. The U.S. is actively destroying all the international forum and institutions that the United States itself helped to build after World War II. I'm talking about UN. They're just throwing UN resolution out of the door like toilet paper. And international the tribunal. Like when they're like, oh, they said something about Israel committing genocide. No, they're not serious. We don't need to abide by that. But what happened is this allow a space for countries like China, Russia, and the risk of BRICS to create alternative international institution. I mean, BRICS originally was an acronym coined by Goldman Sachs as a marketing term for selling stocks in emerging market, but now it's becoming a reality because particularly global South countries see a real need for a real international forum, international institution that offer alternative to the U.S. dominated one that U.S. itself is actively destroying. So this is saying China's business is trade. U.S. business is war. I mean, this is unfortunate. But
Yeah.
this is the current state of things. China wants to trade with everyone because China benefits from that trade. China has no incentive to cut off that trade. It's the U.S. that's trying to build walls everywhere, trying to put sanctions.
Right.
U.S. is leveraging its own dollar hegemony to levy financial sanction everywhere, and that's creating the incentive for de-dollarization. Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
and China is not even pushing for de-dollarization. Recently, China just offered a $2 billion sovereign bonds in Saudi Arabia priced in US dollars.
Wow.
And so yes, I mean, like, this is not de-dollarization, this is re-dollarization.
Mhm.
And the reason China is doing that is because one of the basis for the petrodollar, back in the 70s when Kissinger traveled to Saudi Arabia, hammer out the deal where all oil needs to be priced in dollars. So that means anybody in the world who needs to pay for energy, they have to pay in dollars. But Saudi Arabia is sitting on this mountain of US dollars they don't know what to do with. So what they do? They buy US Treasury bills, or they invest in the US real estate, they invest in the US stock market. So all this money eventually gets cycled back into the U.S. economy. And what China and Saudi Arabia, so Saudi Arabia is selling oil for a lot of dollars, and China is exporting everything else for a lot of dollars. So both of them find themselves sitting on piles of dollars. They don't know what to do because China can't use those dollars to buy high-tech items from the United States anymore. So this way, they find so they say, okay, how about we offer sovereign bonds priced in dollar in Saudi Arabia? So that allows Saudi Arabia, all these oil sheiks and the Prince of Saudi Arabia who have tons of money that don't know what to do with, now they have an alternative. Rather than buying U.S. Treasury, now they can buy the Chinese issue dollar bonds. And then the Chinese can take that money, then they can invest in their Belt and Road project all across the global south. And then then those people who are receiving the Chinese dollar investment to building infrastructure, now they have US dollar to pay their US dollar denominated debts, and the dollar gets circled back to United States. So it's win-win-win, right? I mean, but this is how China was able to make the existing financial order of the world work for them. And this is also the reason that U.S. is hell-bending on destroying the current world order, because they see that China is somehow profiting from that, and we can't have that. So this, it kind of gives the light to the idea that China is somehow China is now the status power. It's the United States that's trying to change the status quo by trying to hold China down. So this is what Mearsheimer's argument is really like. U.S. got to do this imperialism better and smarter. Like let's not spread ourselves too thin. Free from war in Ukraine, in Middle East, and China. Europe, old Europe, and Middle East. That's passe. That's 20th century. The 21st century lays in Asia Pacific, where all the world's major economies are located right now. This is the economic center, lifeblood of the world. So this is why U.S. need to concentrate in Asia Pacific to contain China. This is the idea of Mearsheimer. But I mean, at what's the point? You are creating a risk of World War III for what? I mean, for what? Every country in East Asia, they're perfectly happy to trade with U.S. and China. They don't want to be forced to choose. The U.S. is telling these countries, like, okay, you have to pick a side. You're either with us or against us.
Where'd we hear that one?
but people in Southeast Asia, where I am right now, they want to do business with both. Like, they're like, why not both? Why can't we profit from Chinese investment and sell to United States? And by the way, that's actually what's going on right now. After the U.S. sanction on China that started in the first Trump term, now Chinese direct export to US is declining. But at the same time, the US import from Southeast Asia and Mexico is skyrocketing.
Increasing.
And if you look at the trade flow, it's all these Chinese factories. They're now offsourcing to Vietnam, to Mexico, and Chinese components are now being shipped to Vietnam and Mexico, are being reassembled, and then sold to United States. And US consumer just pay for the premium of this roundabout route of this extra step. And in the end, the decoupling is not happening. There's really still not decoupling from China, because China still contains the world supply chain. So I've been like going on and on. So I'll let you chime in.
No, yeah, you're good. And yeah, so like a lot of people kind of do look at Mearsheimer as kind of like one of the greats in foreign policy, but though, like I've never quite come to understand why people say, "Oh, well, we need to contain China. We need to stop China from growing. We can't have China be the leader in AI." And like I understand their perspective from the respect that they want the US to be the global hegemon, and because like the idea generally on people of, I would say, kind of roundabouts my persuasion, more of like a right-wing libertarian stance, is that, hey, we want the US to be the global hegemon because the US is preferable to China. But at the same time, you got to be objective about it and look at these things throughout the last 30 years. The US is not the good, the good, gracious actor all on the world stage. I mean, let's be honest, China has lifted everybody's standard of living up. And if we want to reject that, I'm sorry, the US is going to reject it at our own peril. So when we put all these tariffs, I mean, in Trump's first administration, 94% of his tariffs, the cost fell on consumers. 6% of those costs fell on China. And then, I'm sure I haven't looked up the numbers for the Biden administration, but I mean, he kept all those, all the sanctions and the tariffs on, and then even increased some of them. And Trump hasn't acted like he's going to take any of them off. So how are we going to rein in inflation from here?
And I want to like, for your audience, I wanted to point out, China is not paying for the tariffs. It's American that's paying for the tariffs. Like China, when their product leaves their factory, they already got paid for. It's American importers of the Chinese goods, when they bring it through United States, through the American custom, they pay tariff to the U.S. customs. So then the American importers just pass that cost to the consumers. So it's the Americans that's directly paying for the tariff. The Chinese, they just make their product for one price, and whoever buys them, can take them and then do whatever you want. And of course, the goal of tariff, I mean, I'm not against tariff. The goal of tariff is to discourage American importers to import from China, so to encourage domestic manufacturing. But that's not happening. That's not happening. And this is because the U.S. have deindustrialized for so long. I mean, the U.S. have been offsourcing factories out of U.S. since 1970s, before China even opened up. It originally was to East Asian countries like Taiwan, South Korea, Southeast Asia, etc. And now there's a 40 years gap when you have like couple generations of Americans who have zero knowledge in manufacturing skills. Like this is a real problem. This is the knowledge gap. Even if they want to bring those factories to United States, you don't have people to staff them anymore, because the ones that originally had the manufacturing skill, they have retired a long time ago, and you don't have a new generations who are trained to do this. So if you have if you want to do this, it's going to be it's a generational effort to reindustrialize United States. But the current U.S. government, they're doing it a half-ass way. China can have industrial policy because China is a communist government. they can have an industrial policy. U.S., we have election every 4 years. You're not going to have a long-term industrial policy that's going to be carried out consistently across multiple decades. That's necessary to reindustrialize America, because that will involve like job training. They will involve overhauling educational system, overhauling infrastructure, revising tax code, and China did all that, by the way, in the last 40 years to grow. But United States, I mean, the idea is good. The idea is good, but it comes down to execution. I don't have a lot of trust in the U.S. federal government to be able to execute this plan, this grand plan of reindustrialization of America. It's more likely they're just going to do what their Wall Street sponsors tell them to do. They're going to chase for the short-term profit, because that everything is now being benchmarked against quarterly earning reports and the stock price. They're not going to think like, okay, well, how are we going to do a 5-year plan, 10-year plan of industrializing America? And even a lot of the effect, if you only put tariffs on China, it's even if those factories are not moving out of China, those jobs and factories are just going to move elsewhere, to Vietnam, to Indonesia, to Cambodia, to Bangladesh. They're still not coming back to United States. So do you want to put a comprehensive tariff on the rest of the world? You will drastically change American life as it is right now. I mean, like, is our elite or anybody in the U.S. is ready to take that step to drastically reforming society? I mean, that's the kind of job that Chinese government can do. I'm not convinced that U.S. government can do any of that things.
Yeah, no, and I'm really not convinced either. So, one thing you kind of touched on there a little bit earlier, and I figured I should share this with you because I'm a General Motors automotive technician. And I have all my hybrid certifications and electric vehicle certifications, and I can't afford the vehicles that come into the dealership that I, pre-delivery inspect and all this stuff. I mean, the Hummer EV is breathtaking. I mean, it is one of the most exhilarating vehicles I've ever driven in my entire life. To drive a 10,000-pound SUV that can go 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds is mind-boggling. It is amazing. But the price tag is $120,000 to $130,000. Yeah, and an Escalade V, which comes into my shop every here and there, $150,000. A brand new, GMC Sierra Denali, you're looking about $80,000 to $90,000. This stuff's really not that affordable here in America. And then even like some of the Teslas start off at about $50,000 a year, which is a little bit more reasonable. But my understanding is I had, I believe you know him as well, but Jason Smith, who lives over in China. We talked about like gasoline vehicles and EVs in China versus the US. He's like, you could buy like a brand new Mercedes over in China for like a couple $1,000s. Whereas here, like, you're looking 6 figures easy for any Mercedes off the lot. So I know that's a little bit, but I kind of curious your thoughts on the EV market here in the US versus China.
Yeah, so I'm not bullish on the EV market in US because U.S. power grid cannot support the EV transition. We like, if you look at the U.S. power generation for the last 20 years, it's flat. It's flat. The Chinese power generation is going up like this. So China builds for growth. They build for future. And right now, because the U.S. power grids has all been privatized, all these utility companies, they're trying to squeeze most profit out of the existing infrastructure rather than trying to build redundancy, trying to build for growth. This is why during a natural disaster like what happened in Texas, people are freezing in the winter because they don't have redundancy, they don't have backup power. And this is and also there's a cost issue. China can. The BYD is their entry-level electric car. The BYD Seagulls goes from between $9,000 to $13,000. I mean, wow. How can you compete with that? I mean, I it's not a piece of shit. It's for that price. It offers amazing value. Like, I would have buy that if they bring it over to Indonesia. And this is why Elon Musk says, okay, without tariffs, the U.S. car makers will not survive. But the problem is, you need some kind of a competition because otherwise they'll keep on making those very expensive cars, which is completely unaffordable. And and I think BYD would probably love to open factory in United States to invest in US factories. But again, over the kind of US policy toward China will probably make them think twice about
Right.
that decision, because what if another presidents come in and toss out that policy. BYD is already in US, by the way, but they make electric buses for like California and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Because that's less controversial than making like passenger cars, because that's where that's going to eat into the lunch of the big three of Detroit. So they would not allow
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So I mean, like, it's tough. It's tough. The thing about electric car, though, what people don't realize is it simplifies. Um, I mean, it simplifies. It allows you to integrate with a lot of technology. You can pack a lot of technology into electric cars.
Right.
You don't have to don't have to do that kind of energy transfer from like combustion engine into power your electricity. And when everything is already electric, it's a lot more smoother. This is why you see a lot of features in the Chinese electric cars. They have like big screen. Like it's very nice, very very
We just
snazzy.
started
And then
getting those a couple years ago. Like a lot of the US vehicles, like a lot of the General Motors vehicles now. I want to say it was probably 2020, maybe 2021, where we started getting a lot of the screens in the vehicles, like all over, like across the dash and everything like that. And then like now I think it's the 2024 or 2025 Acadias. It almost looks like an iPad in the center. And that's like
yeah,
relatively new. Like not every manufacturer has that. And then obviously all the EVs have it, but once again, we're talking ridiculous money for those.
yeah, they're learning, like even the big Detroit big three, because they're involved in China. They have factories in China.
Right.
GM China makes more money. Well, used to before the EV transition.
Yeah.
GM China make more money in China than they make in United States, because Chinese car market is much bigger than the US car market. And
Mhm.
we just had there was an interview with a Ford CEO where he said, "Oh man, I love the Xiaomi SU7." He had one imported over to United States for his personal use. He's like, I drove it for 6 months. It's great. I don't want to give
Mhm.
it up. But he was also mind blown by kind of the gap between the Chinese EV industry and what's happening in the United States. So they are observing what's happening, and they're kind of slowly by osmosis to bring in some of the
Mhm.
stuff over here. But I still think United States, the thing is, it needs an overhaul. It needs infrastructure upgrades. You can't depend on Elon Musk to build all the charging stations.
Right.
You need to build out electric generations. Like, which is because there's a lot, for some reason, still a lot of anti nuclear power in US for some reason. So like a lot of the old nuclear power plant actually getting decommissioned, and then and then what? I mean, like, and then there's of course opposition to more coal plants, and China is making the switch to green energy in a big way. They build out more solar and wind power than anybody. But people will say, oh, but China is also building new coal plants on unprecedented level. That's because solar and wind, they're unstable source of power, and during
Right.
downtime you need to build backup power using coal.
Exactly.
And but China is at least doing that. They're already building out their capacity. US is not preparing for that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and our elite is not farsighted. I mean, they're very farsighted on how to line in their own pocket, but they're not really farsighted on how to develop the country. I don't think they're
Mhm.
even interested in developing the United States at this point. They're just trying to
Mhm.
collect more rent, and so that comes down to a lot of anxiety Americans feel toward China. It's really like a projection. It's really a lot of
Mhm.
anxiety they feel about the direction United States is going. Because we all know it's not going to the optimal place. There's a
Right.
lot of problems. That's why Trump was able to lead an insurgency against the Republican establishment in the first place.
Right.
Is because everyone is aware something is going wrong, something needs to change. This is why Obama got elected, promising change. Of course, he
Hoping
changed nothing.
change. Yeah.
Yeah, something some. What we fear about China is what Americans fear about China is often what the country that U.S. The direction the country U.S. itself is traveling in. They're deeply uncomfortable with the fact that U.S. is being left behind in many ways. Like technologically, in infrastructure, in education, and this. So this is why the idea of Chinese hegemony is frightening. This is where I think Mearsheimer is really good at diagnosing U.S. He knows everything about U.S. empire, how it behaves. So I always listen to Mearsheimer when he talk about U.S. empire. But he assumption is that China would behave exactly the same as United States if China gains the power. This is where I disagree because China had thousands of years of history. They have a different ways of dealing with their neighbors, and United States is in a way I criticize U.S. is exceptionalism. But in a way, U.S. is quite exceptional empire. Like we have never seen kind of this global spanning empire, U.S. hegemony in the world history. U.S. is not normal. U.S. is not the normal. Like not everyone that will turn out like United States because U.S. is exceptional in its own way. So people, I just wish people in U.S. will focus more on building U.S. This is what China is doing. China is more interested in building for themselves, building infrastructure, building the high-speed rail networks. Even when they're building trade networks in global South countries, they understand that global connectivity will help China because China is the world's #1 trading power right now. So they want to trade. They're offering trade because trade is advantageous to China. Right now, U.S. is playing the role of spoiler. It's not trying rather than trying to develop itself, it's trying to blow up everyone else. So right now, like the Ukraine war basically serves the purpose as cannibalizing U.S. European allies. So all the German industries are getting cut off on the cheap Russian gas supply. Now they're being forced to go along on sanctions and tariffs on China. So German industries are now decamping. They're now being outsourced to United States because U.S. at least still have cheap energy, have cheap oil and gas. So U.S. whole plan now is creating chaos in Europe, in Middle East. So all the money from the moneyed people over there, they have no choice but to park it in U.S. Treasury, U.S. stock market, U.S. real estate, and then U.S. appeared this oasis of calm. and so this is a U.S. strategy at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, you had somebody on your channel comment. Mearsheimer's entire thought process is that the world is full of dicks, so we need to be the biggest dicks. That kind of nails it. But yeah, much to your point, I do think that China probably looks at what the U.S. has done over the last 30 years and thinks, wow, they fought 7 wars, well, pretty much 9 now if you include Ukraine and Gaza. And they spent trillions of dollars. They have men, at record numbers blowing their brains out. Their life expectancy is decreasing. Their men's life expectancy is decreasing. They're having less and less kids. I think China kind of looks at that and says, we don't want to do that. Why would we want to do that when, we have a very, very large population that has issues, but like we're starting to fix these issues. If you listen to Breakthrough News at all, they do a show called The China Report, which I think is absolutely fascinating. And their overall like cancer mortality is dropping like rapidly. And I don't think it's quite on par with the US, but it's getting there pretty quick. So, like I said, I think China looks at a lot of what the US has done over the last 30 years and thinks, we could do this so much better. And like, we don't have to kill literal millions of people to do it.
Well, China life expectancy already surpassed United States in 2020, and
Yeah. Yeah.
the thing is, China actually have a lot of internal problems. You know, it's a full-time job managing 1.4 billion people in a country,
Absolutely.
and it has its hands full to develop China. Like China will always be priority of China. They're trying to develop China and making sure its citizens have a more prosperous life. That's their top priority. I mean, that should have been the top priority of the United States government to make sure Americans live more prosperous life. But unfortunately, they're more interested in lining their own pocket. And like we're like U.S. is becoming more like there's an idea that U.S. is becoming more like Latin America, where you have this
Mm,
oligarch the sitting on top who don't really care about all the other plebs who they don't even see as like their
yeah.
people, and they just trying to squeeze as much profit out of them. I think unfortunately that's where we're headed, and I mean, the good thing is Americans in general are recognizing the problem, right? I mean, this is why they first voted Obama and then they voted Trump, but I think it would take a lot more to really flush out the system.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. So, I think that's about all I wanted to ask you about today, Carl. I really, really enjoyed this talk. It was very, very informative, as was the last one. So, if anybody didn't catch that show, last time you were on, we talked a little bit about bricks, a lot about Tiananmen Square. That was really, really fun chat. And then today was very enlightening, as I kind of expected it would be. So, Carl, feel free to plug yourself where everybody can find you and support you to my audience, and we'll close her out.
I am on YouTube. My channel is just my name, Carl Za. And I'm a prolific shit poster on Twitter. So my handle is just /Carl Za on X. And I also run a podcast on Patreon. If you go to Patreon and search for Silk and Steel podcast, or just search for Silk, it should be the first podcast that show up. What I'm more focused on, I've been focused on everything China, history, politics, culture. But I'm more focusing on history right now on my Patreon podcast. You know, I'm doing a chronological retelling of Chinese history from the very beginning. Now I'm at like 500 BC, so I still have like
Jeez.
2,500 years to go. So yeah, if that's your thing, check me out on Patreon and subscribe, and check me out on YouTube and Twitter. And thank you again, Kyle, for inviting me. I can talk about China all day. You know, like I can geek on this forever.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely do a third show sometime because I just, like I said, I really, really enjoy talking to you because this stuff is so fascinating to me, especially as an American, because like we hear so much about China, and I hate to say 100% of it's bullshit, but about 100% of it is absolute bullshit. So, it's always enlightening to talk to you. But yeah, I think we'll close her out there, Carl. Let's definitely do another one sometime. If you don't got anything else, that's all.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Until next time, take care, everyone.